What up, family? It is your man, CRB Jr., aka Courtney Brown Jr., here at Motown Mafia Podcast. It is all good. We are recording, taping, and all that on Father's Day. So happy Father's Day to all you great dads out there. And obviously, big shout out to my dad, the Field Marshal, the Professor, Courtney Brown Sr. As we used to say back when we were in the nightclub business, the man who makes all this possible, and now in this case, the man who has made all of this possible. So shout out to you, Dad. Love you. So what up, family? Happy belated one day. The white folks have decided to make Juneteenth a holiday. So for lack of better words, happy Juneteenth. On a later post, we'll talk about what we think about a holiday being made out of the fact that our descendants did not know that they were free when they were free. But different topic for a different day. So we are here. Good. Hopefully everything is going, everything for everybody out there. We've been really busy. We got some footage coming that will let you know what you'll be seeing. And it was from last week. We were at the Hustle and Grind Book Festival. Shout out to all the authors who came out. Terry Woods, Lady T, got a chance. Big 50 stopped by our booth. She's the woman featured in BET's Trap Queens. She's got some other biopic, I think, coming up. So big shout out to Big 50. Thanks for coming by, spending some time with us. We got some things coming up with her. Another fascinating story, just another Detroit phenomenal story from that life. Who else? Shout out Harlem World. Brother Ice and Brother Kevin came by, showed some support, always does good business. Look forward to re-engaging with Brother Ice and doing some things. Ice has been the primary distributor for our book, Motown Mafia, Memoirs of a Kingpin's Kid, when he came out. And he now has the Big Man on Campus book, and just has been in our corner from the beginning. A real one, straight out of New York, out of Soundview. Just a hell of a stand-up guy. So shout out to Ice. Thanks for coming by. Shout out to Brother Kev, his man, coming by with us, helping us out there. So that was all good. So speaking of Brother Ice and Soundview and New York, last month I was down in the Dominican Republic and I had an opportunity to do some reading. I do a lot of playing, do a lot of relaxing, do some reading. And a good friend of Brother Ice is a gentleman who I've had the pleasure of coming in contact with and chopping up a few times. That would be the brother Kevin Childs. So Kevin Childs, all those who follow this kind of stuff, the guy who founded Don Diva, and just a remarkable story that he has in his time in the game. Kev released a book, it's probably not been out a year now, called The Crack Era: The Rise, Fall, and Redemption of Kevin Childs. It was done in conjunction with a brother named Richard Ray, Esquire. I just want to say it is a great book. Kevin is, I think, about a little bit more than a year older than me. So that whole crack era, the 80s and 70s, for anybody who was of a similar age, you're definitely going to get a great appreciation because he does an excellent job of capturing what was going on in whether it was Harlem or Detroit. There's some differences, but way more similarities. Just an excellent read, really entertaining. I highly recommend to anybody on a bunch of different levels. Buy the book. It is well worth the entrance fee. And so I want to do a little review of the crack era, the rise, fall, and redemption of Kevin Childs. And I'm not going to give up the whole book because you guys need to buy it and support the cause, because that's what this is about. But there were just a couple. Actually, there's something from every page. It's a relatively average page book. It's about 375 pages. There was something on every page that jumped out to me. But there were some things on certain pages that really kind of jumped out to me that I thought would be insightful. The smallness of the world. Kevin's younger brother was at Columbia University at the same period of time that I had moved to New York for the first time, doing some cleaning money work for my dad. And, you kind of knew that his family obviously come from a kind of different situation. But anyway, the fact that, our paths were so close, he had a store up on 125th Street long before I did. I would follow up and have a business up there. And the world's really small. And it was really kind of fascinating how our paths were always crossing, but never did cross. And I was joking. I was like, if they have, if our paths had ever really, really crossed and we got a chance to chop it up, being all the kind of mutual people and the proximity of where he was at and where I was hanging out at, I don't know, we would have either probably made a few $1 billion or we'd both be in a whole lot of trouble. So, but anyway, page 32, I'll just read it and then I'll do some kind of framing of it. However, I became aware that the primary source of his income, and he's speaking about his uncle, and that's something that's Kev's uncle, he will explain to you in the book, was a major player and kind of did some of the mentoring of him into the game. However, I became aware that the primary source of his income came from the heroin trade. I make this statement so casually because if you were Black or Latin from New York City, as well as most other urban areas across America, it is highly likely that you had someone in your family who was either using drugs, selling drugs, or both. Drug issues in minority communities are a microcosm of the struggle and lack of opportunity that those areas have endured for generations. Organized crime had strategically decided to inundate the Black community with narcotics, and the Black realities of life within those communities made people receptive to both the escapism and the economic opportunities that drugs provided. And, when we started this project, one of the challenges that I quickly saw was trying to explain that, Eddie and my dad, and back in the 70s, the level of money they were making, and it's not knocking or putting anything up on a pedestal, but there is a pecking order. But finding that differential that, hey, this was not a hustle. This was, as another OG around here calls it, this was truly the grand hustle. This was that hustle that they make movies about and write about, because all the stuff, the trips around the world, the multi-million-dollar houses, the millions and millions of dollars of money being made, because every African American, especially in a town like Detroit, and very similar to what Kev was saying in Harlem, everybody, or the majority of people in the African American community have had an uncle, a brother, a dad, a friend of the family, somebody really close to them who were involved in the underworld or in the street, in the game as it's called, and had seen some Cadillacs get bought and some Mercedes Benz, and had walked into a room and seen $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, and trying to put in context that this is not what that story was. And that's not to downplay any of those other situations. It's just that this was it's been a phenomenon in our community. And it's not that different than every other ethnic group that, as I stated at the end of Motown Mafia, every ethnic group has used drugs, narcotics, organized crime as a conduit for them to grow and rise and try to get into the mainstream of American economics. And Kev brings up that point on page 32. That this is the environment that many of us came from. And me being the kind of second generation was a little different in his situation, because I didn't have any I've never had any financial struggles, because I was the second generation of that. But still, and said, I was a product of my environment, because everybody around me lived that life, or a great deal of the people around me, lived that life. And understanding why it's so pervasive and why, it transcended, Kev does a good job talking about how, I've said it, and it's all respect to the people in hip hop, but the hip hop and rap music is built on the foundation of what the players in the 70s and 80s did, because that's what those guys started rapping about. And even though those guys who were rapping about it weren't per se, or most of them weren't living that life, it resonated with the public, because again, in our cultures and in our communities, everybody knew somebody who was that person they were rapping about, or dressed like that person they were rapping about. And it just gives you some thought, and even today, even still to this day, why that street culture is so appealing, to us in music and in TV and in movies. It is because that is the reality that still exists in a lot of Black and Latino areas in America. Um, when we can't separate and we can't run that, and we just need to really, I think, sometimes kind of put it in some perspective. So, and then on that same page, just another side note, the next sentence of the next paragraph, he says, and during that time, many of the dealers often got high on their own supplies. And I'm thinking of how it's come full circle, because in the 80s, it was all about, in rap music and those kind of things, the selling drugs for the profits and lifestyle. But it's true that this was the era, again, right before this crack era, where there was no stigma. And understanding it's so difficult now, because everything goes full circle. Right now they rap about using lean and taking Percocets, and what was that song by Future? Molly Percocet.
Yeah, mask off.
Yeah, which is insane, but there are roots to this, right? That and that goes back to that era. Nobody, so many guys who were young in the 80s didn't know that they were going to eventually become addicted to drugs. And a lot of what set that up, to put these things in context, was because the OGs they saw from the 70s had come from a time where getting high on cocaine in particular was a thing for the affluent. It was a status symbol. Mm-hmm. And that kind of transcended into the 80s attitude, but we didn't see the effect of those young men getting high and using drugs, and until really the 90s, and then going into the new millennium. And now, I remember some days on the spot on French Road, and when I would stop by and visit Eddie, and a guy would come looking disheveled, looking like a bum, and people would be like, dude, he used to run the East Side. He was that guy.
Whoa.
And again, you can all relate to that.
Mm-hmm.
We all know, and in every city, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people who are now addicts, who you come across an OG or somebody from back in the day, and they'll be like, oh, no, that guy used to be the man, right? But nobody knew the disaster that was about to befall many of our communities. I think Kev does a great job of balancing the pros and cons of what happened. You can't mitigate and can't be ashamed, and we as a culture need to kind of mature. The fact that young Black men were able to become millionaires pretty much overnight in that era, and all that came with that, and what happens when you take young men from poverty and then they become millionaires really quick, and all the ramifications of that. And then, of course, what it did to our neighborhoods with those who got addicted to it, and the destruction that it caused in the family. But it's so easy to point the finger at those young men and say they were the villains. But I think enough time has passed now that we can try to put that in some perspective. Those young men were victims in a lot of ways themselves. He talks about himself, and it's true, and salute to him, of being like one of the last men standing, because he was in that era with Rich Porter and AZ, and we know all the tragedies that beset them, and the whole guy with the other guy out there, Alpo, and that Preacher crew. And when he starts talking about all the madness that was going on up in Harlem, I remember it was a conversation that his younger brother had, and he was saying, and at this time I have no idea when this is like 88, and we're at Columbia University, and his brother says something to a friend about, hey, I'm going to stay on campus this year because my brother says the nigga's getting kidnapped up in the Bronx. And he knows nothing about my situation. I'm in New York doing some money laundering for my dad, because despite him being a real fool in a lot of ways at that age. I had enough sense to know I don't need for people in New York. I don't need to try to be that guy in New York. I'm a long way from home. I'm a long way from my friends and family. And I don't want to get caught up in none of that drama that's going on up in Harlem.
Wow.
Right? They just need to know that I'm a square kid whose people got a couple of dollars, and that's the way I played it. And when I really now get in the depth of what was going on up in Harlem at that time, oh boy, was that a good idea. Oh boy, was that a good idea, because it was madness, but he does a good job of really explaining. They were young, and I think a lot of times we lose sight of that. I look back again. It's 87 when I'm in New York, when I'm coming across all of this. And I graduated from high school in 83. I went 2 years after my prom. I'm involved in a money laundering scheme going all over the Caribbean and shit for my dad. At the time, it all seemed natural because, when you live in these kind of families, we are very functional, but yet dysfunctional family, because you're not supposed to go from prom to money laundering, right? But that's the way my life ended up going. And so we all need therapy, we all need therapy because it was, but when you put young men in those kind of situations with that kind of money, and I had a big heads up because I had already grew up in that environment. Having money was nothing new to me. And I look back on it now, I used to come across guys in that era and their fascination, their desperate desire to show everybody that they were getting money. And I get it. But I used to think to myself, I'm like, dude, that's not really, because I'd already seen Dad and them go away and do time and go to jail. I was like, do you know that that's how you end up going away to jail? That you are telling on yourself, and Kevin was smarter than most by, setting up some legitimate businesses, and he ties that back into the fact that he had some mentors from back in the 70s when players really did, if you hustled and you got to a certain level, you end up buying real estate, you opened up restaurants, you opened up clothing stores, all of the above. So that was a good part. And then I'm going to just go into one more page that I found really kind of compelling in the book, a bunch of them that we'll wrap up though this session. And that is on page 63. And again, this is just something to really to help the audience try to put in context why what would go on to be all the flossing and what we would now call balling, but back then they didn't even call it balling. I mean, this is before there was words like swag, but why it was so over the top and why it compelled the youth of that day to end up, quote unquote, making music about what they were observing. Keep in mind, a top NBA draft pick was making a little more than $300,000 to $400,000 a year in the mid 80s. Some of my peers easily exceeded that in cash with no off-season agent. So what Kevin's saying is, keep in mind, a top NBA draft pick was making a little more than $300,000 to $400,000 a year in the mid 80s. Numbers me and my peers easily exceeded in a month. So you're talking about the Michael Jordans and Charles Barkleys of the world were making $300,000, $400,000 a year. At this same period, he's explaining to you there were young black men, him and his peers, that were making that much money in a month. And it reminded me of, you've heard me joke of the tragedy of my summer of 1987. I went on a wild just partying, tricking, fucking off with Eddie Jr., and I ran through $200,000 in 90 days. Now I can look back and be like, Michael Jordan wasn't making that kind of money. So at that time, the amount of money that was in the streets compared to the normal economy, whether it be sports or rappers, and why nobody who was getting money in the 80s was thinking about being a rapper, because I think as Kev talks about it in the book, that would have been a significant pay cut. He goes on in that same chapter or paragraph on page 63 to talk about, we blazed the trail. Hip hop was gaining traction as an art form. Our popularity and money were outpacing the record artists' pay. We were the images they would come to rap about. We drove the cars they aspired to have and dated the girls they fantasized about. Hip hop is built on the street creed, and only the ones at the time that had the certified audacity in that realm were us young hustlers. And none of us were picking up a microphone because nobody would risk the pay cut. So,
wow.
And that is so true. And I was dating a girl. This is all the way in the 90s. Shout out to Devin Robeson. She's probably got a different name now because I'm sure she's married because she was just a great girl. I'm sorry, I blew it. You were a great girl. Anyway, though, I'm caught up in my thing. It's 95. This is like the 94, 95. It's like the Pakistani plug era. And I'm in New York. I got my store up at the Mart on 125th Street. And popping them are doing back home $50,000 a day, between Eddie, Fat Frank, yeah. But that's not even what it's about. The point is, she comes in all excited one day to the loft, and she's like, Courtney, and she was working at Tommy Boy Records, and she's like, we got this artist Ja Rule, and he's gonna be big, and wow, I wish we could get involved because she had just left. It was EPMD was Eric and Parrish Making Dollars. Those guys split. She ended up working for Parrish Smith, and I think his company was PMD, Parrish Making Dollars. And, opportunities blown. She was like, oh, if we could get into managing him, this guy's going to be big. And I was stupid. I'm silly enough I remember me saying this. Baby girl, fuck this Jahu or Jaru. The niggas ain't getting no money. And she would look at me like with this look of disgust, and I'd be like, "Ain't nobody got time." Those guys, and this, because she would be excited about like she'd get us tickets to go to parties that Puffy was hosting, and I'd be like, "But the guys ain't getting no money. I mean, we can go, but I'm not, And silly me, I should have took a little more opportunity to build a relationship with Mr. Combs and Mr. Ja Rule. But again, we didn't know. And again, the money in the streets still as late as the early 90s just dwarfed athlete music and rapper music. But that's a cautionary tale. I say that with all humility. I didn't get it. Blinded by the bag. I'll have to do a whole nother post on all the opportunities I blew by being blinded by the bag. Because we was getting our money and I couldn't see beyond that. So I'm going to go into a few more pages later on another post. Again, but in retrospect, again, the crack era, Rise and Fall and Redemption of Kevin Childs. Great book again. Make sure you guys check it out. We're going to shut down this post. Again, happy Father's Day to everybody out there. Good Juneteenth, we'll just call it Commemoration Day. Remember all that we have come from. I did a little speech at a little event the other day, and we got a lot of problems in our community, but with the good white folks deciding to make a holiday about us being enslaved, so we'll let that go again. We have come a long way, man. It's only been 160 years since we've been off the plantation, since we were property, and now we're property owners. They've thrown everything at us that you could imagine. And as Maya Angelou says, and still we rise. So to all the family out there, big shout out from Big Boss Filmworks. Everybody keep doing what they're doing. It is your man, CB Jr., Motown Mafia podcast. Make sure you guys who are watching us on YouTube are hitting that like, share, and subscribe. The pod is on Spotify. And where else are we at on the pod?
Oh, yeah. We're on Spotify. We're on Anchor. Soon to be up on iTunes, pretty much everywhere you get your podcast. And check out our t-shirts, our new merch. We got t-shirts available. I'll be putting those up on this post. The Cash App is $ Big Boss Filmworks.
Awesome. And on that, with the Cash App, $ Big Boss Filmworks, you can go to the website if you like, but if you just send us the Cash App, and shout out to the gentlemen. Some people have already started buying the merch, and so
big shout out to Mr.
yeah, and all that. Finally, for those who don't know, available in paperback. It's been available online on Kindle for a while now. But Big Man on Campus, you can get it directly from us. You can also still get it from Amazon. But if you want to cut out the middleman, just give us a shout. Send us a cash app. The information, I believe, is 25. What is the book? I should know this.
The book is $16.99.
$16.99. Shoot us a cash app. $ Big Boss Filmworks, $16.99. Give us your address. We will get you the book. I will autograph it and get you my name. Again, it covers kind of the same era that we were previously talking about in that great book, The Crack Era. This is kind of what I was going through in life. We had to obviously change some of the names and locations to protect the guilty and the innocent. So holler at us about this. Big Man on Campus finally got in book in paperback form. I think you guys will find it an entertaining read. I'll be totally honest, after reading Kevin Child's book, though, really makes me want to sit down and do a non-fictionalized version of what was going on. Hopefully my hoodlum friends and family will sign off. Love you guys. Will sign off on me actually being able to tell the story as it actually went down. But that will be a work in progress. Available always on Tubi TV and Amazon Prime. Motown Mafia, history of Eddie Jackson and Courtney Brown. 10-year anniversary coming out. You know what, Lou? We dropped this December 19th, 2011. Ooh. It'll be 10 years since the doc. I think, when are we looking at having, I know you are working diligently on the making of the Mafia.
Yeah, Making of the Mafia coming soon. We've had to push it back up into the summer, but watch for it. I'll keep you posted. And it's going to be hot. Interviews and videos from back in that era.
So yeah, to kind of explain to you how it all, came to be, I think, because especially from an entrepreneurial point of view, it's just how we came about, how we are even here talking, having this conversation, right, and how this all came about. It was a journey, and I think you guys will find it interesting, because God looks out for children and fools. And we definitely qualify for that. We
definitely qualify.
Yes. As Al Prophet, and I was just crunching some numbers, man. This project it amazes me, man. So we're humbled by the support we've got and how this thing is going. We are in preliminary talks, and the team is excited. Al Prophet was in town. We hooked up with Scott Bernstein. We're really trying to figure out what this next project is going to look like. Unlike 10 years ago, we kind of really have at least a better idea of what we're doing. We'll keep you guys abreast on that. And also, Motown Mafia, Memoirs of a Kingpin's Kid. Also, again, just shoot us, if you want to cut out the middleman, shoot us the fund, $16.95, $ Big Boss Filmworks, Cash App, give us your address, we'll sign it, get it out to you. I can sign it, we can have Pop sign it, we can always talk about if you want to have a really collector's edition. I'll sign it, Pops will sign it, and maybe we'll get Eddie Jr. to even put his signature on it. All that stuff is possible. So anyway, we're going to shut it down, family. Appreciate you guys again. Hit like, share, and subscribe. Tell somebody about us. It's a lot. It's still going down. The journey continues. It's your man, CB Jr. signing out. Motown Mafia Podcast. I'll let your man. Peace.
Beautiful.
Said just a little framing of what that piece in the Dominican Republic was.
Mm-hmm. And this will be for the diaspora plug.
Right. let me know.
Okay. 1 second. I just made that its own thing. And we'll go on to the next.
I'm gonna do the setup piece for that, and then I'm gonna actually transition, or do I need to break it up into an Awoke Wednesday episode for Diaspora Plug?
Keep it all together.
Keep it all together.
Keep it all together, because you're gonna do are you gonna do a Money Monday today?
Yeah.
All right, and we can get this one. We can get this one rolling. All right.
Oh.
Go ahead.
No.
Oh, do you wanna do a wardrobe change, like a big boss
Next
t-shirt?
one.
All right, bet.
I don't even know. I do have a T-shirt here. Yeah. Anyway, what's happening? Are we live?
We are hot.
We're always live.
Yeah,
We're hot.
Yep.
What's happening, family? It is your man, CRB Jr., here at the Motown Mafia podcast, Big Boss Filmworks, doing what we do. Shout out to everybody out there. It happens to be Sunday the 20th, so it is Father's Day. Shout out to all the dads out there. And, of course, got to give a shout out to my dad, the field marshal, the professor, my namesake. So love you, Dad, and all that. And shout out to all the other dads out there doing what they need to do, doing what men do, which is we do what we got to do, not what we want to do. And so salute and shout out to all of that. It was just time to really tell a great untold Detroit story, because it kind of covers Detroit at its zenith.
Very interesting story.
We decided that we were going to make a movie.
All right, Rich Rossi with you with Motown Mafia. I'm with Courtney.
Louis Stevens,
Courtney Brown.
Courtney Brown Jr.
And Alan Al Prophet Bradley.
And this is an entrepreneurial, inspirational story too, because again, I'm a real estate retail guy. That's what my skill set is. But I'm a businessman, so I was like, we're gonna do it. Sometimes when you got a dream, you won't have all the answers on how you're gonna do what you're gonna do.
What made this one unique was not so much the crime, but the intertwining with Detroit's history and the Motown era and kind of the economic decline of Detroit. And it's really the story of a family. And from some perspectives, it's has a happy ending, like you said. For others, it didn't have a happy ending.
Right.